Welcome to OneMinding, and thank you for joining us on today's show as we talk with the wonderful Jamie Smart, who's a Sunday Times best-selling author and world-renowned coach. Thank you to Jamie for joining us, and thank you to our sponsors, Vamp. Please share, subscribe, and enjoy the show. Hi everybody, and welcome to the first ever video podcast from OneMinding. Hi Miles, hi Jamie. We've got a very special guest with us today. So we've got Jamie Smart, who is Sunday Times best-selling author. He has a new version, a revised version of his book, Clarity, that has just been released, and that has been 10 years since you've written that. So there's a bit of a backstory to how Jamie and I met, and we'll go into that later. And I'm interested to know how you guys met as well. So lots of cool questions, lots of topics, and really, really happy to have you with us, Jamie.
Oh, it's great to be here, and thanks to you both for inviting me.
Yeah, hi Jay, hi Jamie. I met Jamie, I suppose I got into the print, it's got to be nearly 10 years now, Jay, and
at least I would have thought.
Yeah, it's a long time. And Jamie was one of the first in-person events that I went to. I think it used to be at Regent's Park, and you did half days.
Regent's College. I still remember it.
Yeah. Oh wow. Okay. Yeah. And I went and did a half day, and it was just, it was so cool. Met some really cool people, and kind of mind-blowing as the principles are, as we've all found out, that they change your life and they blow your mind. And what's really an interesting story about when I met Jamie was that my mum, who had seen me in quite a bad way for around 7 years mentally, suddenly saw me change overnight. And she actually found you first, Jamie. She said, what is this? Like, what's happened to her? Why is she so different? I've got to find out more about this. And she signed up to a year course with Jamie, even before I'd met him. So that was really cool. And I think she spent about 2 years with you in the end.
Yeah. How's she doing anyway?
She's really good. Yeah.
Oh, good. Send her my best.
I will do. But yeah, so that was our connection. And it just kind of from there we'd see each other at different events and webinars and hang out. But it has been a long time since we've seen each other. So it's really nice to be able to sit and chat, because I'm sure a lot's changed for all of us in the last few years.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so Jamie, for anyone that doesn't know, is also a Three Principles coach, teacher, author. I mean, how long have you been around the Three Principles, and how did you find out about them initially?
Well, it's an interesting story. I was first introduced to this understanding. A buddy of mine was doing something with it in like 1999, 2000. And he was telling me about it. And I was like, that sounds a bit shit. And he gave me a book to read by a guy called Sydney Banks. And I read the book and I was like, yeah, just as I suspected, nothing to see here. I know all that, and it's too simplistic and blah, blah, blah. And then 5 years later, I was out for dinner with Michael Neal. Maybe it was 6 years later. And we're out for dinner. And he said, oh, I'm exploring this stuff. And I was like, I think that's the stuff that guy told me about. And I was like, well, maybe it deserves a second look. And so I had a second look. I was like, no, I was right. It's rubbish. And third time lucky, I finally, I guess, was at a point where I was ready to see and hear something. And in end of 2008, beginning of 2009, I started looking seriously in this direction. And I had some insights. My first insight was, oh, everything you've been looking for outside of you is already there within you. Like, I'd read that before and heard that in spiritual teachings and stuff, but I suddenly saw it for myself. Like, I'm not talking about, glasses and foreign holidays. I'm talking about, the experience of peace of mind and well-being and clarity, love and connection and fulfillment and purpose and peace, and like the things that those kind of core, those kind of essential qualities that everyone's looking for, kind of whether they know it or not. It's like, oh, you've already got that. It's already there within you. So that immediately kind of reorganized my goals and objectives very quickly, because a lot of the things that I had on my kind of to-do list were an endeavor to make me feel better. It's like, oh, that's not really relevant. Like there were still things worth doing, but not for the reasons I thought they were worth doing. So the second insight I had was just a few weeks later. I realized, oh, the fact that a person can see or hear or feel or perceive means they have the source of clarity and resilience and realization and transformation already there within them. I kind of got like that everyone's got innate mental health. And again, it was an insight. I went from not knowing that, or from having heard it as kind of a good idea, to knowing it like you know your own name. And that immediately made me a more effective coach, a more effective trainer, all that sort of stuff, because people kind of pick up on it. Like when you know, it's funny. I was working with a group of coaches, and I asked them. I did a poll asking, what's the number one thing that they thought would make the biggest difference to the impact they could have with their clients? And the number one thing was and more confidence in their abilities as a coach. Like almost everyone had that. Bottom of the list for me was confidence in my client's capacity for transformation, for resilience, for realization, because people pick up on that. So that was a game changer. But here's the funny thing. I was speaking to a buddy of mine, Chip Chipman, many, many years later. And I was telling him that story about reading the book, the Sid Banks book in 1999, and how rubbish I thought it was. And he said, it's because you read that book in 1999 that we're having this conversation now. And he said, I don't think I communicated how terrible I thought it was. He's like, no. When you read it, that book did something to you. And that's why we're here right now. And I was like, no, he didn't get it. But then as I reflected on it, I thought, you know what? I do seem to remember a couple of times reading the book that something kind of stopped me. And I'd be like this, but my intellect kind of paved over it real quick. So now I'm not so sure.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because when I'm going through the podcast and editing, I hear things that I didn't hear when we recorded it. And it's like, just because you're ready to listen doesn't mean that you're ready to hear something. And I think that the 3 principles is the real epitome of that. You know, it's so simple, but there's always something that you can see, and it is just absolutely transformational. I mean, what was the point that you knew that you had to work with people, that you had to show people that there is more to life than maybe what they believed previously? What was your driver?
Well, I was already doing kind of that work, because the previous 10 years I'd been doing, my specialty was kind of conversational belief change. So I was very interested in how people formed beliefs and how you could change those beliefs and that sort of thing. So that was already kind of my stock in trade. But when I first was introduced to the principles, people were saying, oh, this is principles, this is reality, this is how it really works. And I was like, don't give me that. This is just another belief system. Because I was, my belief systems were kind of, that was what I traded in from day to day. So at first, that's how I was engaging with it, as just another interesting belief system with, different things people did and different stories people told about it. And people would say, no, this is different. And I'd be like, everyone says it's different, but it's, that everyone says their thing is different. And they say, yeah, but no, here's what's different. So I was like, yeah, it's just another belief system. And then June 2009, I'm in Los Angeles, and I have this insight. And I suddenly realized, oh, this is to psychology what the discovery of germs was to medicine. This is principles for the field of psychology, because psychology at the moment anyway isn't what they call a hard science, because there's no unifying agreement about what the basis for the field is. I was like, oh, this is principles for psychology. And I kind of had a vision, which is I envisaged, just like you and me were born to parents who already knew about germs. And they already knew about, wash your hands and the 3-second rule if you drop a sandwich and all that sort of stuff. envisage the generation of children being born to parents who already know about their innate well-being, who already know that that their kids aren't broken and don't need fixing, that they already work perfectly. And so that was really what inspired me and motivated me. That's what had me write the book Clarity, the original one. That's what's had me do the updated edition. Because here's the funny thing. I've always been kind of had a kind of long view of things, like long strategic kind of view of stuff. And so this idea of the first generation of children growing up to parents who already know this stuff was very inspiring to me. But the thing I overlooked until a few years in, I started meeting parents of kids whose kids were growing up in those homes where they saw their children's innate well-being because they've been introduced to these principles. And so it's already happening. So that's kind of changed my focus in a way, which is I'm kind of enjoying it now rather than going, oh, well, one day once everyone knows this, then it's good. It's like, no, it's good now. Like, look, I've got clients right now whose children haven't even spent a day in a home where their parents don't know that this is what's going on. And it's so cool. It's so cool to see.
It is such a revolution. And well, I've only been around the principles for a couple of years, but can you see how the times are changing and how people are, you know, they're finding things like this? Can you see how it's having an effect? Because I do believe over the last few years, with all the lockdowns and with everything that sort of went on, people did get very lost, but people are really trying their best to. They know that there's something more. And have you noticed over your sort of career that there's been a change in the last few years?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a couple of things. You know, if I look back, I think that we're in the early innings of the information revolution. And at the beginning of the book, I start with a quote from Herbert Simon, who said, "What information consumes is rather obvious. It consumes the attention of its recipients." And, you know, people say that, you know, oil used to be the most valuable commodity on the planet, then it was gold, now it's data, apparently. But I don't think data is the most valuable commodity on the planet. I think the most valuable commodity on the planet is attention. Like, we're having this conversation, we're giving each other our attention, people listening to this are giving us their attention. These handheld phone devices are basically organized in every way possible for us to put as much of our attention into them as possible. Apps make their money through are putting our attention there. And so information and the information revolution and algorithms and AI and all that sort of thing is going to be oriented towards consuming our attention. But if you stop and think about it for a moment, the quality of your life is the quality of your attention. You know, the quality of your life is going to be the experience you're living in. You know, if you're living in an experience of peace and well-being and fulfillment and possibility and that sort of thing, that's going to be a very different experience than living in the experience of stress or distraction or disconnection or whatever. And I think that there's two things going on. One is that the information revolution is hoovering up people's attention, and we don't know what the psychological and other implications of that massive global experiment are. But at the same time, we're living in a world where people are very confused about how their experience is created and who they really are, how their minds work, right? And so we've got this information revolution colliding with a misunderstanding of the mind. Just like in the 1800s, they had the Industrial Revolution colliding with a misunderstanding of infection and germs. Like in the 1800s, a woman was safer giving birth in the street than in a hospital. because the hospitals were like infection farms, right? But that was just because they didn't know about germs. They just didn't know this simple thing. And similarly, and which is the way it had been for thousands of years, but the Industrial Revolution kind of brought it to a head. Well, I think it's the same with this. You know, we've been in a misunderstanding of the mind and of who we really are for thousands of years. Like this goes way back. People have been talking about this and people have been pointing to this and that sort of thing. But now the information revolution is kind of smashing into it and making it far worse. We got a humanitarian crisis in mental health. And so it's coming to a head. You know, I think the nature of stuff is that when things get quite a bit worse, then the search for a solution becomes more evident and people become better listeners. I think they become more open to stuff like I'm seeing. You guys are probably seeing this. People are open to stuff now that they just weren't open to even 5 years ago or 3 years ago. So yeah, I think I see that was a long way of saying, yeah, me too.
Brilliant. Yeah, I guess you're our first guest, as you know. So, and we've had 43 released episodes so far. So people have heard us talk a lot about what the principles are. So I think it'd be really nice for them to hear from you, you know, your definition of them, what you believe is the most important thing that you can convey about the principles that can really help humanity.
Yeah, well, the way I talk about it is that, you know how people have a lot on their minds? Well, there's something you can learn that's going to take stuff off your mind automatically and uncover the confidence and freedom and well-being for you to do the things you need to do and have a beautiful life. And the principles are a description of or a metaphor for our innate capacity for peace of mind, for well-being, for love and connection, for resilience, for creativity, for presence. Like all of that is built in. It's all built in. And we have this, it's so interesting, you know, Jem was talking about how you can listen to this stuff and hear something different every time and that sort of thing. Well, how it looks to me is that the stuff that makes a difference to you, like someone could listen to this whole interview, right? The thing that's going to make a difference to them is the thing that comes from within them. It's the hit of fresh new perception, of fresh new perceptual reality that's going to bubble up from the heart of their being. It's going to come from within them. And that kind of the beauty of this is that to teach it, the most important thing is to know where the thing that's going to make a difference is going to come from. Like I know that no matter what stories I tell or what answers I give or that sort of thing, the only thing that's going to help someone who's listening to this is the realization they have from within them. So my job, if you like, is kind of almost like a song and dance man to kind of distract the personality for long enough for someone to glimpse something that's already true from the heart of their being. So the principles are a description of, from my perspective anyway, how your experience is being created moment to moment. You know, we're living in what I refer to as the principle of thought taking form in the moment, which is just a way of saying that our picture of life, our experience of life, including even like if you look around wherever you are right now, it looks like, it genuinely seems like we're looking out through little windows in the front of our head at a world out there. That's how it looks to me, right? Like I'm here, I can see my computer in front of me, I can see you guys, I can see my cup of tea. It's like, definitely looks like I've got windows in my face and I'm kind of peeking out at the world out there. That's not what's going on. The neurologists figured this out like 170 years ago. What's actually going on is raw data, millions of bits of raw data are pouring in through our senses. And then our deeper, you know, neurophysiological and psychological properties are taking a guess and going, what world must I be in for this data to be coming in? And then it just creates this 3D hologramic perceptual reality. Now, I'm not saying there's no reality out there. I got nothing to say about that. But our experience of reality is being created from within in every moment, right? But it seems to us like there's more to it than that. Like, it doesn't seem to me some of the time like I'm living in the experience of a creative power, creating a reality moment to moment to moment. Sometimes it seems to me like I'm living in the experience of what that guy said to me last week, or the talk I'm going to give next month, or that sort of thing. But that's a trick of the mind. You're living in the experience of this creative power in every moment. And the more you're able to see that for yourself, the more freedom it gives you. So that, I think that's one of the most valuable things a person can discover. And you could discover that insightfully for yourself. The other thing is who you really are. You know, there's this quote by Teilhard de Chardin that I like to bastardize. He said, but he didn't say this, I say this. He said something like it. What I say is, we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're one spiritual being having 8 billion human experiences. And who you really are is that one spiritual being. Who you really are is consciousness itself. Who you really are is, you know, the wisdom and intelligence behind life, you know. And that looks really like that's something that a person can discover for themselves. And you discover that for yourself, it's gonna help you out. That's gonna do something for you, because it means you can't be harmed by anything in this world. Now, let me be clear. My physical body can be harmed by stuff in this world. If someone comes in, like punches me in the face, or starts, you know, challenges me to a chainsaw juggling competition or something, my tissue damage is a real thing. So that can definitely happen. But who you are can't be damaged. And I think on the one hand, you know, people have, you know, all kinds of challenges of one sort or another with physical safety. And I think, you know, it makes sense for people to take care of that. But I think a lot of times there's a deeper fear, which is that who we are is going to be damaged or hurt or harmed. Like, that's the thing that stops people being themselves, showing who they really are, taking risks, risking, you know, being criticized, fear of, you know, what's referred to as fear of failure, fear of criticism, and that sort of thing. That's a fear that you could be damaged psychologically, and you can't. There's nothing in this world that can harm you psychologically and emotionally. You're perfectly safe.
That was a huge revelation to me when I first came into the principles. It was, you know, just that point, because not only did I feel unsafe and I was scared of the world, I'd actually become so terrified of my own thinking. It was as if that could hurt me too. And I think to come into the principles and see thought and see that, you know, it was just a transient experience. It couldn't harm me, it couldn't touch me. And then even more than that, neither could the world. It just completely transformed me. You know, I lived in a very, very dark place, and suddenly there was light, there was hope, there was living. You know, this is what I really love too, is that yes, we get psychological freedom, we begin to have a much better experience of ourselves and our own minds, but we live. I see over and over again people coming back to life, enjoying their humanity, enjoying life, which is, you know, I believe that every day was just one to get through. And now it's to be lived, it's to be enjoyed. Look, of course, not every day I see that, but just to have it available, just to have this knowing of who I am and how I hadn't seen that until I was 43 years old was kind of unbelievable, because like you, I'd probably only been around 6 months in the principles. It took me around 6 months to see it. I was with someone from your course, began to teach me. He was a hypnotherapist called David Cotterill. And he was the person that I went to, and he was teaching me, and I just wasn't getting it. And obviously, you know, my history of living in India, meditation and spiritual teachings, I was very much, well, you can't really teach me much about consciousness, you know, a real smug cow. But there was that point where I saw it. And what was interesting to me, and what I'd love to ask you, because I still don't really have an answer, is what is it about this teaching that is so insight creating? Because I'd looked in so many different directions and had and explored so many spiritual teachings, but I see over and over and over again, not only in myself but in other people, that something is woken up from within through these principles.
So I've got a couple of thoughts on that, and these are just my opinion, right? But the first thing is, let's start on what I think is one of the most important aspects of it, the role of insight. Like if you talk to any principles teacher worth their thought, that's kind of the only thing they're trying to create the conditions for, right? Like so I think part of what makes it so insight rich and insight prone is those of us in the field who are trying to share this understanding, all we're aiming for is for people to have the insights that are going to make a difference to them. So I think that helps. It just simplifies matters. I mean, I know when I used to teach NLP, right? And people would have insights while I was teaching NLP, but I didn't know the value of that. And I wasn't trying to have, that was like a pleasant side effect. And the fact that often when things really worked for them was when they had those insights, I didn't really see the importance of it at the time. So at least in my own work, like really, really seeing the value of insight. Trying to organ, like I literally see my job description as helping to make it as easy as possible for my clients to have insights, right? The insights and realizations that are going to transform their life. So because that's what I'm aiming at, the chances of it happening are increased from when I wasn't aiming at that. So that's the first thing that occurs to me. Second thing that occurs to me is that the thing that kind of really helps create an insight-friendly space is the feeling you're in. Like if you ask people, when do you get your best ideas? It'll often be at a time when they're in a more relaxed state of mind. People say, well, in the shower or just drifting off to sleep or on holiday or that sort of thing. And I found that if my job, right, is to help create the conditions for insight, is to point people in an insight-friendly direction, well, the best thing I can do is to model that, is to be open to insight myself in the moment while I'm teaching. So I'm doing my best to be teaching from that kind of razor's edge between the known and the unknown. I want to not know. I want to be oriented towards the unknown, oriented towards, because I don't want to be trotting out what I rehearsed yesterday kind of thing. I want something fresh and new. So with any luck, if someone's going to a principles teacher, a teacher will be teaching in real time, like pointing, like demonstrating the very thing they're pointing to. So that's the second thing. I think just, the feeling, like there's a way in which part of how this understanding gets shared is kind of like a contact high, where you kind of pick it up off the people you're with. So that, I think that makes it more insight prone. I think another thing is the principled nature of it. Like, think about principles. Like if you look at something like the principle of gravity, right? That's a principle. And you've been learning about that since you're a little kid. Like you were learning about gravity from the first dribble that went down your face. Like it went that way instead of that way, right? Because that's gravity. Well, there's this thing the psychologists call statistical learning, which is learning from raw data. So you learned about most of what you learned about gravity, you learned as a kid, and you learned from raw data. Like you learned the implications of bouncing in the middle of your parents' bed compared to on the edge of it. You learned about what happens if you trip over your shoes. You learned what happens if you push a cup off the table. You learned about gravity from raw data. And you had insights about it. So when we're oriented, we have very, very deeply built into our learning systems. I mean, our natural learning systems, not our school systems, our natural learning systems, the ability to learn about reality from raw data, because our survival depends on it. Like if you're the kid who goes, oh, you know what, I don't buy this gravity stuff, I'm going to just fly off cliffs and stuff. Well, you'll get out selected from the gene pool really quick. So there's value in learning about that. So the thing with gravity is it's easy, it's hard to miss it, but you take something like germs are an aspect of reality, but it's really easy to miss them. So we need people to teach kids about germs. You got to make it visible to them. So I was telling one of my clients about this, and she told me about her daughter who was like 4 or 5, and she goes into school and the teacher goes, we're going to learn about germs today. And she gets 2 of the kids and puts glitter on their hands. And then she goes, we'll come back at the end of the day and see where the glitter is. Well, of course, where's the glitter at the end of the day? Everywhere, everywhere up to about 4 feet high in every surface in the whole room. And the teacher goes, that's what germs are like, except you can't see them. And so she's like, this brilliant teacher has taught her students how to have eyes for something that's not visible. So once they got that, they can learn about it. So you've got an embodied understanding of gravity, you've got an embodied understanding of germs, which lets you know when you have to wipe a counter before cooking on, preparing food on it, when a sandwich has been on the floor too long, all those sort of basic things, you've internalized that. Well, with the principles, what we're trying to do is give people eyes for something that's real and true, but it's not visible. Mm-hmm. And because once you get eyes for it, you're going to go on a learning curve. You're going to learn from it automatically. It's going to be built in. You don't even have to think about it. And so what you see is a kind of snowball effect, which is once people start seeing this, it continues to have a pause. I'll do a piece of work with a client, like a corporate client, like an intensive, do a little bit of follow-up with them, then not see them for 3 or 4 years. And then we'll get together. I'll be like, how's it going? And I was like, yeah, way better. It's because it keeps going. It keeps going because we have that innate capacity for insight and that innate ability to learn from raw data, to learn from facts of life. So I call that implication-based learning. We have the ability to learn from implications, the implications of principles. There's no short answers here.
It's okay. Well, something you said earlier, I really heard something, and I'm really glad that we're recording this, so I can go back and listen to it. But yeah, there's I was going to mention about how we initially sort of met, because it feels like a lot longer ago, but it was May 2021. So me and you, Miles, we must have been doing a bit of work just literally before that, or we just started going into it. So we've known each other for 5 years, but I've only been around the principles for maybe 2 and a bit. But you made it sound so simple, which it is. And I didn't disbelieve you in any way, shape or form. But I was like,
a little bit.
A second opinion here. Need a second opinion. Yeah. So I contacted Jamie, and I think I was in a bit of a mess, to be honest. I was realizing that I needed to change lots of things, and I had the answer, but everything that I'd previously known went out the window, and that was really confusing for me. Mm. And so as soon as I spoke to Jamie, pretty much word for word, you said in the simple way, you are not a diagnosis, you are not this, everything is brand new, fresh thought. You don't need to hold on to anything. And as soon as you explained it, I said, well, she's definitely right then. which I knew anyway. And then I went on a course with you a couple of weeks later. And then me and Moles really did sort of intensive stuff, and we did the courses together. And it's just to anyone that's listening, if it does sound confusing or it doesn't really make sense, just keep listening and keep in the conversation, because I mean, you must have had maybe that happen before where someone's like, can it be this simple? Like,
I was that guy, right? Like, did I tell you about having the book 10 years earlier and be like, nah, like I was that guy. And it's massively informed my approach to teaching it. And how, like, when people, it's funny because I've been getting interviewed a lot about the book, and people go, do people ever kind of resist what you're saying or doubt that this is true? I'm like, oh, all the time. Like that's standard. And I understand why. I mean, on the face of it, this sounds like, too simple or simplistic or something like that. So I understand why people think it must be more complicated than that.
Yeah, I mean, it's going from trying to figure out your way through life and then realizing that you don't have to. Everything you previously believed in is kind of shattered, and that's a great thing. But it's quite the, you know, from going from black and white to multicolored, and it's really, really quite incredible. So I thank you both for sticking with me for this journey, and look where we are now. It's pretty amazing,
well, it can
right?
be kind of disorienting as well, right? Like if it's kind of interesting sometimes when people are really struggling, the one thing they're certain about is how miserable they are, how fucked up they are, that sort of thing. And to say, oh no, actually, you're just a bit confused, but actually you're fine. That can be a big kind of blow to the identity. So
Jen
yeah.
was the queen of cancelling appointments. She was literally last minute, 3 minutes before every time. Sorry, Moles, I can't make it today. But it's, as you said, Jay, it's such a common story. It's
Sure.
Why would the character want to lose being have anything other than the character? It wants to be the star of the show. So for me, it's of course we're going to have resistance, because it's the nature of who we think we are, but it's just that tiny glimpse. It's just that, it literally is. It's a glimmer, and we go, oh, and that's it. It opens.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If you like, for people who are exploring this, if you've caught even just a tiny glimpse, like just that says, hang on a second, there's something here, that's enough. Like, just Sid Banks used to say, be grateful for what you've seen and you'll see more. And that's my experience, just appreciate what you've already realized, and you'll keep on realizing stuff. And it seems to me like pretty much endless possibilities of what you can see more deeply and experience more deeply. Like I often say, I experience more love and connection in the average week than I used to in the average year. It's just, and if someone had said that to me 20 years ago, I'd be like, good for you. What would I want that for? But it's so that I didn't even know what I was missing back in the day.
Yeah, I love that. We don't know what we're missing. We haven't got anything to compare it to. It's only when you see it. That's amazing. I remember on probably the second time I spent some time with you on one of your courses was, you got me up to speak, I think, and I said about, I used to live in hell, and I went, sometimes I'm not great, and you went, yeah, you used to live in hell, now you just visit. And I was like, yeah, that's it, because we can still, we don't, with what we do with OneMinding is we never want to say, look, this is guaranteed 100% happiness the rest of your life. We know that we get caught up and we contract and we have thinking and we can feel bad, but we know now that there's this deeper sense of who we are, that's just a temporary state that we're experiencing. Something fresh will come through, and there's this, but there's no need to fix that anymore. How much time did I waste trying to fix a feeling? Now it's oh, it's just a feeling that's appeared that will disappear and another feeling will turn up. And that's my experience of being this human in this moment. And there's less focus on me, I guess. It's not so self-indulgent. You know, I have my moments, don't get me wrong, but it's much more, oh well, that's how I feel. Well, I've still got to go and do this, and I've still got to have a call, and I've still got to speak to a client, rather than, oh no, I feel like this and I've got to change my whole day around a feeling. There's a freedom just in that simplicity.
Yeah. Nice.
And I do have something to thank you for as well, Jamie, actually. Moles has just finished an online course, and on, I think it was the second to last week, she read something from Clarity about the caterpillar and the butterfly. And I had a huge insight. I couldn't really explain it, and I'm going to try again, but it was something like, because I was actually reading that day about the butterfly turning from a caterpillar, and they liquefy themselves, turn into mush. But the most incredible thing is they can still remember their memories. So from like tests where they don't like particular smells, they will avoid them depending on what they liked when they were a caterpillar.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It was crazy, right?
Yeah.
And then I was hearing it as Molly was explaining, and I tried to explain what the insight was, but it was something like, okay, so all those times that I felt like I don't even want to be alive anymore, I can't cope with the world, that was me holding myself in a position that no longer suited me. I was making sure I was this caterpillar when I should be growing and changing, rather than being stagnant and being stuck. And so I've, you know, for most of my life, I've had quite bad suicidal feelings and things, and they're just not there anymore. And if something does come up, it's just whatever. It's just a thought. I don't define or hold on to anything like that anymore. But it was such a huge insight, because it kind of makes all of those times okay. Whereas before I was quite scared of them. And now it's just because you were not allowing yourself to be the person that you were supposed to be. You were holding yourself in another position. And that for me was so huge, because now I've redefined most of my life. So that was really amazing.
I love that. You're so welcome. I'm glad I could help in some way. I had similar, like, because my background was alcoholism and that sort of stuff. And I used to sometimes get suicidal thoughts and feelings. And I used to be very frightened by those. Like, that was very troubling to me. And then as time went on, I saw, oh, it's just a sign you need to die to an old way of living. It's just an old way of thinking about the world or thinking about yourself, that sort of thing, that it's time to let go of it. And it's just not frightening anymore. It's comparatively rare these days when it does come up. But if it does, I'm like, oh, okay. Hello, old friend. Okay, I'll have a look and see what's past its sell-by date.
Yeah, it is very interesting. And it's almost like all of those times that I felt like that, it was never I wanted like a death of me. It was of the self that I had created and I got stuck in.
Sure.
And one thing I have to ask you, is your last name really Smart, or is it?
No, it's just Smart. It's just Smart. I think if I was to change it to Really Smart, that would be troubling for people. I think it would be too much.
You were blessed with the perfect name.
Well, I couldn't agree more. It's helped me out in all kinds of ways. Remember going for a job interview, and the person interviewing me said, your last name is Smart, so I guess you must be really smart. I was like, you've clearly had some college. It's like, that's how these things work.
Oh, that's amazing. So as we've spoken a bit about the book, I'd love to hear a bit more. I did see your video where is it the 14th and the 15th of March? You are
11th and 12th.
11th and 12th. And I'd love
Is this going out before then?
Hopefully.
Oh,
Yes.
wicked. Well, let me
I've
tell
got
you.
my book here, by the way, Jay.
Nice. So here, I'll tell you the, I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, because in the past we've gone for, Sunday Times bestsellers and that sort of thing, which has been a lot of fun, and it's been great to have the support of my community and that sort of thing. And this time I was like, you know what, while I'd love to get another bestseller, the thing that's actually important to me is people reading the book. And if I had the choice between 100,000 people buying the book, but none of them reading it, or only 10,000 people buying the book, but all of them sharing it with 10 friends, I'd be like, let's go for that one, because I just know that the world needs this understanding. And so what I decided to do was, anyone who gets a copy of the book and shares on any social platform, like a photo of themselves and a sentence or two saying how this understanding's made a difference to them, they can have a free ticket to an event that I'm doing called the Clarity Coaching Experience. It's on the 11th and 12th of March. And if you go to jamiesmart.com/get-clarity, there's a video explaining this, and you can register your details and we'll send you your ticket and stuff. But the idea of that is, that way we're seeing lots of people sharing here's what a difference this book made to me, or this is what a difference this understanding made to me. And then people in their social networks are going, oh, hang on a second, I know that person, I'll see what they're up to. Get more people reading the book. So this event on the 11th and 12th is going to be a celebration, because here's the funny thing. So when I first stumbled across these principles, it was like the psychology's best kept secret, right? And Sid Banks, the guy who first articulated these principles, he died in 2009. And the biggest challenge any movement has is outliving the death of the founder. Most movements never outlive the death of the founder. And so I saw, well, that's going to be important. And then I went to a conference in September 2010. There were about 100 people there. And the average age was, in the 60s. And I was being referred to as the young blood. And I was like 45 or something. And I'm like, we need to get this understanding out there. We need to reach more people. And so that's why I wrote Clarity. I wrote the book that I wished I would have been given back in 1999 to read, because so it's like making it as easy as possible to go on the journey of this understanding with. And then, but here's the thing, I was very early in my journey when I wrote it. I wrote the book in 2011, and I'd only been exploring the principles for 2 years when I started writing it. And it came out in 2013. So I, had a bit of a journey under my belt by then. But I've had another 10 years to share this understanding, to road test it with clients and audience, all kinds of different audiences, ranging from military personnel to prison inmates to corporate CEOs to regular folks to therapists to coaches, all kinds of different. I've heard a million objections to it. And I've had lots and lots of my own insights. My understanding has deepened over the years. So this, any author to get the chance to do a 10th anniversary edition is huge, because most books don't enjoy the kind of popularity that makes that a possibility. So I'm very grateful to all the people who are still interested in this work. I feel very fortunate that the book's made it this far. And it's got kind of my latest insights. I've added to each chapter, I've put a what the research says section at the end of each chapter to help people kind of see the various bits of scientific research and psychology research and that sort of thing that support what we're pointing to here, so that people can read around it. I also got the chance to do, there were a bunch of case studies in the original book, and I got a chance to do follow-ups with the people from those case studies and say, where are they now 10 years on? And it was great to do those. But also, I added a chapter at the end of the book, a chapter 25 called Troubleshooting Enlightenment. And I just took 10 of the kind of the big challenges that people often have, things like stress and anxiety, PTSD, depression, relationship stuff, those sorts of things, as well as stuff like goals and career change and kind of the big 10 things that are most often, are challenges for people, and just looked at them from a principles perspective. Say, what can we see about these things from a principles perspective? Then included a case study for each one. So that's a new chapter at the end of the book too. So it's been great to see how well it's been received. I'm excited, love seeing people's, photos and their stories of how this understanding's changed their life. And I'm excited about the event on the 11th and 12th of March. It's going to be fun. If I don't know if there are links under this, but if people go to jamiesmart.com/get clarity, you can find out all about the event and get your free ticket if you've shared something about it, and or if you want to share something about it. Yeah. So
yeah, there will be links. It'll be underneath. So when we send it out, don't worry about that.
Cool them again.
Yeah, I think I've got Up to the Butterfly. I'm looking forward to that last new chapter now, because again, one of the first books I read, Michael Neal, Inside Out Revolution, then Clarity was the second, and both were just, mind-blowing. I think, again, we sit here and we talk about this power, and you talk about all these different, anxiety, PTSD, depression, that this one thing that we talk about actually makes such a huge difference to so many different things. And I think people can sometimes have a hard time understanding that, because we're used to putting things in boxes.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, Moz. I have just been interviewing one of our colleagues, Dr. Bill Pettit, and I interviewed him a few years ago, and he was very excited at the time because he'd just come across an article in the American Psychiatric Journal, the American Journal of Psychiatry, called All for One, Psychiatric Diagnoses in One Dimension, something like that. And what the researchers realized is that there's a single factor that indicates how much of a psychological pathology someone will have and that sort of thing. And they said, for the first time ever, we'd seen that there's one thing that determines how much mental illness, mental health issues someone will have. And what Bill saw and what I see is it's the inverse of your understanding. The greater your clarity of understanding, the less likely you are to be distressed by any of those kind of challenges and issues. It's interesting. One of the case studies at the back of the new book, I got an email from an Army veteran called Helen, who said, I'm an Army veteran. I've had PTSD for 10 years and I've been undergoing treatment for 10 years. And I've had all kinds of different things. And she listed the different approaches she tried. She said, none of it really worked. She goes, but I read your book, read Clarity, and I don't have PTSD anymore. She said, in all those years, no one ever told me there was nothing wrong with me. No one ever told me I wasn't broken, that I was already mentally healthy. And so for this edition, I was lucky enough to be able to follow up with her 6 years later, 6 years after she sent that email. And she's like, yep, still going great, still don't have PTSD. She started a business with her husband and life's good. And I mention that because I know for so many people, maybe they've been given diagnoses or told they shouldn't be hopeful, but I want everyone to know you have every reason to be hopeful. You've got a source of clarity and resilience and well-being within you that is equal to whatever comes your way in life. So yeah, very, very good reason to be hopeful.
Yeah, and no exceptions.
Yeah, no exceptions. It's 100% deal.
Yeah, it's I feel so blessed to have found the understanding. I think at any age I would have been blessed, but when we teach it to younger people, it's like, wow, they're getting this young. What must that be like? So yeah. I just think that wherever you are, whatever you've seen, it's just whatever we can share. That's the ripple effect. We don't know what someone's going to hear. You don't have to be teaching it like we do it. You can just be someone that's heard something, and you sit next to someone on a bench and have a conversation and share something that you've seen. And if that points that person to within, you know, that's insight producing. That's where they're going to hear something. So that's what I love about this as well. It's not a superior, there's not a hierarchy. There's just all of us that have seen to whatever extent we've seen it, that go out and share it to whatever extent we share it. But we know that in the sharing it, that's where we create this world that we want to live in, that this is just known. We just know that we work from inside to out, and that we have innate health, we have well-being, we have joy, we have happiness, we have peace. And because to live from there, the freedom to live from that space is something that is our birthright, and we've all forgotten, we've all been pointed away from it. And to just be pointed back to it is, you know, that for me, that's it. That's why Gemini started OneMinding. That's why you do what you do. You know, it's just for people to just get that glimpse that we spoke about earlier.
Yeah, I just love that, Mols. I love it. Beautifully put.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm 43 episodes in. I'm getting all right. Okay. At it.
I thought you were going to say you're 43. I thought, I don't know, as in 43 years old.
That's when I found the principles. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's there is so much. There's so much to see, but it's so simple. And I think we overcomplicate everything. I mean, when you look at children and animals, they're unindoctrinated. They don't worry about. They have no sense of like, no, you can have that tomorrow. It's kind of now, just being here. And I guess as we get older, that's kind of, it just leaves us, doesn't it? We don't get taught this at school, and it all gets covered up, and we get this identity, and none of it is true.
Well, I mean, it's good news and bad news, isn't it? Like I'm grateful for the fact that I'm able to think about future scenarios and plan what to do and that sort of thing. So I think these are like, I'm glad that we've got forebrains and that we've got, you know, this cognitive capacity. It seems useful. It's just that it's like being given an amazing computer without any kind of instruction manual or anything. And so this very, very simple understanding of the mind is like, it's like getting an upgrade to the technology that your phone's running on, you know, like if I don't know, I've got whatever the more recent iPhone is, and it can run all kinds of amazing apps and do AI and all kinds of stuff. I can't run any of that on the old phone. Like, you need the new operating system. And this is like a new operating system, and it's like an operating system upgrade for your mind, just understanding how it works. It has, and there's a feedback effect as well of understanding how it works. It's almost like there's almost like a bootstrapping thing going on, which is very cool. So yeah, I'm glad I can think about the future and that sort of thing. But I'm also glad that I don't have to be at the mercy of an imagined world out there in the future or the past or that sort of thing, which is how it used to seem. And it didn't seem imagined. I mean, it seemed like, you know, you would be drinking like me if you had the challenges I do, right? Like, I just didn't realize.
Yeah, we just didn't realize.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it's like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? It's easy when you know the answer.
Yeah, it's just something that I guess I just feel lucky. I do feel lucky, but I don't know if you'll have an answer, but you usually do, so I'm sure you will. If you could spend some moments with Sid, do you have one thing that you'd like to ask him, speak with him about? Would you just sit in silence? You know, what would that experience look like for you?
If I had the chance to spend some time with Sid Banks, I'd just listen to him. I never heard anyone ask him a question that got an answer that resembled the question being asked in any way, shape,
That
or
is
form. So
true.
I'd be like, anyone can ask a question. I could almost ask any question. And I tell you what I would be interested in knowing about. What does he mean by free will? What does he mean by free will? I'd be interested in that. I'll tell you something else I'd be interested in. He often says that ego is just an image of self-importance. I have my own idea of what he's talking about specifically, because it's very specific language. But I'd like to know what he says to that. But
yeah, I'd like to know what you think of that.
Well, sure, I'll tell
Yeah.
you. So my girlfriend's got a little dog called Jack, a little cross between a Jack Russell and a toy poodle. And every night when it gets dark, it gets to a certain point of darkness and Jack can see his reflection in the French windows at the end of the living room. And when he catches sight of his reflection, he goes running towards those windows, barking. And when he gets about 6 foot away, launches into the air to attack that other dog. And he slams into the window and then he falls to the ground and then kind of struts away, kind of going, I showed that guy. And I would laugh at him every time he did that, because I was like, that dumb dog doesn't know that's him in the window. He doesn't realize it's him. And then one day I realized, oh, that's not him. That's an image of him from 20 feet away or 10 feet away or 6 feet away. But that's not who he is to himself. That's a third person perspective on him. He hasn't learned that image over there has any relationship to his felt experience of himself. Well, that's different for us. We learned early on, probably about, I don't know, 12 to 18 months, that anytime we saw that image over there from, 3 feet away or 4 feet away or whatever, it was like, oh yeah, that's you, that's you, that's you, that over there, yeah, that's you. And we, to some degree, lost touch with that felt experience of self and became hypnotized by a third person perspective of self, of self-image. And we started to evaluate that self and worry about that self and all that sort of stuff. That's not who you are. And that self, that image of self from a few feet away, it ages, and we're in the domain of the relative in relation to it, right? Like sometimes we think of that image, we're like, yeah, I'm quite pleased with that. And other times we're like, oh no, what an idiot. And just depending on how we're feeling and what we're perceiving, right? Well, who you really are is not relative. It's not a variable. It's constant. It's constant. And so that image of self-importance, that third person, the idea that who you are is that image of you from a distance, that's not true. Not true. It's a case of mistaken identity. And we've been taught to put, so much time, energy, and effort into maintaining and manipulating that image of self, and it doesn't even exist. It doesn't even exist. It's light on a screen. It doesn't even exist. It's a reflection. It's not who you are.
Yeah, I love that. It's so powerful to begin to see and explore that all of that made up stuff, that it's so transient. I'm not one thing. I'm not a set character. You begin to see, oh my God, I changed so much. What I think of the self is up there, then down there. How can that actually have any validity when you actually see the scale or the bandwidth of how much it changes? You begin to see the transient nature. You see the creation destruction cycle, you begin to understand that just before all of that, there is who we really are. And it contains everything that we've always looked for in the world. And it's like that seeking, for me, that seeking just fell away. It ended. I came back to, I saw it, and I sought it all over the world. And it was in this house in Essex on a Tuesday, rainy February night that the insight hit, the first one where I saw thought. And it just dissolved. It was like, oh my God, I am thought. My life has been thought. The world is thought. And there was just this sense of peace that I hadn't felt for 7 years. And it's like, wow, I had no idea I was ever gonna feel it again. I had no idea that it was even available to me.
Yeah. Yeah, right on.
It's quite, I find it quite strange sometimes, because it does feel like we know something, not that we shouldn't, but for me it's like, oh my God, this big secret that's been hidden from me forever. And I think, you know, there's a reason that it's not taught in schools. There's a reason that they add new names for mental health diagnoses every day now. We are in a mental health epidemic. But do you two ever feel similar, as in you feel like, obviously we know that we want to get this out to the world, but do you ever feel like you're being sneaky, or like, oh God, we've got this amazing information that we want to share with people, but if the world was as should be, this should be the teaching from as soon as you're able to learn?
Well, I don't know. The children are born knowing this, and then it gets, you know, conditioned out of us. But that looks innocent to me. Like this is kind of, on the one hand, really simple, and on the other hand, kind of easy to miss, kind of non-obvious. And you know, the other thing is, you know, bold claims require bold evidence. You know, we're making very bold claims. You know, I regularly say, you know, that you have the source of mental health within you and that sort of thing. Well, those are bold claims, and they need bold evidence to back them up. And I think that, I don't know if this is ever, you know, to respond to your question, is it, do I ever feel sneaky? I don't know if this is ever going to get in through the front door of psychology. I think Sid Banks, he got to the point where he decided that it was probably going to be just lots and lots of regular people seeing it for themselves, and then going to their doctors or whatever and say, hang on a second, you need to know about this. But I saw something which I really liked, actually. I used it as the opening line for the final chapter in the book. And it was in an interview I saw with in writing with the Dalai Lama. And he'd just been given the Templeton Prize, which is a prize that's given, it's awarded annually to a living person who advances Sir John Templeton's vision, which is harnessing the power of the sciences to explore the deepest questions of the universe and humankind's place and purpose within it. So it's kind of that borderline between science and spirituality. And the Dalai Lama was asked what his hopes were for, you know, the future. And he said, my main hope is eventually, in modern education field, introduce education about warm-heartedness, not based on religion, but based on common experience and a common sort of sense, and then scientific finding. And I think that's probably the sequence it's going to go in. It's going to go in common experience and a common sort of sense, and then scientific finding afterwards. The science, because for science to take a serious look at this, there's got to be a good reason to. And I think that good reason is going to have to. But here's the other thing. I can't remember who said it, but I think it was John Forte said, just like the blossoms come when it's blossom time, the steam engines come when it's steam engine time. And I think, you know, the principles come when it's principle time. You know, the world was kind of doing okay without them for quite a while. But now they're really needed. The information revolution is a huge challenge to general mental health and well-being. So maybe it's time for this. So we'll see. I think that it's pretty innocent that this isn't taught in schools, and you know, I see lots of people who are, you know, eager to learn this and eager to share it with other people, but have difficulty explaining it and that sort of thing. So I know, I think it's pretty natural. So someone once asked me, do you ever have trouble convincing people of the effectiveness of what you do? I'm like, I have trouble convincing people it even exists. It's like, so I'm not surprised people miss it.
Yeah, really interesting. You mentioned about the Dalai Lama with the writings. It was going to be one of my, I can ask it now actually, and for both of you, I'd like to hear what your answers have been. So say for instance, this evening you get a visitor and they say, okay, you are the chosen one. You are able to rewrite every scripture, every religious book, and you're allowed 1 or 2 sentences, and everyone's going to wake up in the morning and they won't remember anything apart from what this says. What would you put as the, like a word or a sentence or a paragraph of what you think the world would need?
Oh, what a good question.
Right.
I know, I'll let Mols go first. I'll think about it for a second.
Okay, thank you, I think. I think it would just have to be pointing people. It would be a sentence, you know, everything is, the world that you see is within you. Everything that you see is within you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it would just have to point them back that it's not out there, it's in there, but in here, it's coming from here. Because for me, that's about as fundamental to what we teach as we can get. You know, we can say, oh, it's thought, which it is, or it's consciousness, which it is, but it's coming from you. It really is it really is inside out. And I think that would be the if I could only have one thing, that would be my message.
I figured out what my message would be. It'd be, go find Sid Banks' work and listen to it and read it as much as you can, because that material, his books, his recordings, his videos, they're available free online. I've learned more from those recordings than I can ever put into words, like that there, because it's so interesting. One of my dear friends and colleagues and mentors, Jan Chipman, she, like me, also enjoys listening to Sid's work and listens to it most days and that sort of thing. We were talking about this. I was in my Clarity certification training. She's one of the guest teachers on it. And we were talking about our shared love for listening to Sid's work. And she said something beautiful. She said, you know, I love listening to Sid's recordings because he makes it so easy for me to hear something new from within myself. And that's the same for me. Like if you approach Sid's work with an open heart and an open mind, you'll have realizations and insights from within the heart of your being that'll transform your life. And I can't think it, like there's a way in which my book Clarity is a gateway drug to Sid's work. I don't know of anything more powerful than the capacity for insight and realization that you have within you, and that's at the heart of your being, every single one of us on this planet. That's the the most powerful thing I know of, and the most powerful work I've seen to help you orient to that is Sid's work. So I'd write that. So go check out Sid's books and recordings.
Yeah,
We both passed the test, and you are both the chosen ones.
Oh,
Don't
lucky that
wanna
we're
be,
the
no
chosen.
thanks.
We're the chosen two.
Oh,
seems like a lot of work.
No, it's just literally one sentence. You're done.
Oh, okay, that's it. Oh, that's
One
fine.
and done.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Jem, what about you then? You answer your own question.
Yeah. Let's hear it.
I would say, you don't. Your thoughts are not truth. So be conscious.
I missed that the line cut
Yeah,
out.
I think you cut out, darling. I've got your thoughts are not true.
Your thoughts are not truth, but they do create your experience. So be conscious.
Interesting.
Kind of more of an instruction, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
Some people need to be instructed. I know I certainly did. But we've got there eventually.
Yeah, I think we're all pointing to the same thing in you know, because we always are with this work. So we're always pointing to it's you. No,
you,
it's
baby.
you. What, Jay?
I said it's you, baby.
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly that. Yeah, it's yeah, I think the Sid question was probably my main question. And another thing I'd like to know is, because we all love a quote, especially in the principles world and in all the books, you know, every chapter is always a quote. And what's your favorite one? What's the quote?
Oh, what a good question. I'll tell you what my favorite one is. At the very first Sid Banks recording I ever heard was called Beyond Psychology. It's one of the really old ones from like 1974 or 1975.
It's my
and
favorite
he's got
one.
this, huh?
My favorite.
Yeah. And for anyone who hasn't heard him, Sid speaks with a quite a thick Scottish accent on it. But I used to have a sleeping disorder when I was first listening to this stuff. I had a sleep disorder, and I found that if I played this recording, it would make me go to sleep. And so I listened to it many times just because it was my go-to make me sleep thing. So I must have listened to this thing like hundreds of times, and I get, a few minutes in and I'd go to sleep. But it sounded to me like Sid was just talking utter gobbledygook, like I had no idea what he was on about. It just sounded like total bobbins, but it would make me nod off. So I'd listen to it hundreds of times. Anyway, so I'm listening to it one day, and all of a sudden, instead of it sounding like gobbledygook, it sounded so clear, like he was laying out this like a scientific equation. And he says, you're searching for silence. Everybody in the world searches for silence because everybody in the world is that one same superconscious state playing the game of life. Now, in this game of life, we all search for ourselves. When I say selves, I mean your inner self, the one that created the life in the first place. He says, now, most people are not aware of this. And I'm like, no shit. He says, no, now most people are not aware of this, but if you're looking for happiness, if you're looking for peace, if you're looking just to have a nice, quiet, contented life, in actual fact, you're searching for your inner self. And I love that, because for me, that's the whole ball game right there.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Again, heard it, listen to it, hear it again, and get that feeling. Just get that. Oh, it's so wonderful that we get to hear the same thing in different ways over and over again, but hear it more deeply. And it still has such a profound effect on our being. Because I think if you think of many things. We've seen it. Oh, I've seen that movie, don't want to see it again. Read that book, don't want to read it again. And how you know that this is so different is we read and listen to the same things over and over again and hear something fresh and have that feeling of dropping away from the intellect and touching that deeper space and just coming back to that aliveness that we are, that joy that we are, that peace that we are. And that's feeling is priceless to me. It's when I have that dropping away, and it could be from listening to you, listening to Sid, it could be anywhere. We know that, you know, that feeling isn't dependent on circumstance. I've had it in King's Cross Station, you know, it's that, and it's okay, that has to be from within, because otherwise my intellect would be bored of it. You know, if I was just working from the level of mind, of personal mind, I'd be dismissive of it because I'd already know it, because the mind already knows everything. And
when it comes to movies, I'm kind of like that anyway. Like I'll watch a movie and then I'll forget that I've seen it, and I'll watch the whole thing and only remember that I've seen it when it gets to the very end.
That's quite nice. I'd quite like
I
that.
love it. I love it. I can watch the same movie over and over again and enjoy it each time.
I'm exactly the same, but it's annoying because it's normally halfway through and I'm like, oh, I've seen this. But yeah, it really does happen. Wow. What you were just explaining about the intellect trying to work everything out reminded me of when you explain about Sid Banks and his cup of tea, that it's the best cup of tea ever. And you can do that with everything in life, you know, unless it's a poorly made cup of tea. But when you're really in the moment and you're experiencing only that, how can it not be the best cup of tea that you've ever had?
Yeah, well, we're box
But
fresh
actually,
in the moment.
Yeah, no judgment, no should, would, could, just is, and peaceful.
Yeah. It's where it's at. It's all here, all here, all now. Nothing other than this. That's always a beautiful reminder when we get that, oh, just this. Nothing else really exists. There's us on this call in this moment, and then the next moment, and then the next moment. But we get so caught up in so much other stuff that the peaceful feeling that we're looking for can't be found anywhere else. It can only be in the now. And I think that's, again, when Jamie was saying about listening to Sid, that's, for me, Sid comes on, that I'm there. Yeah.
I've got a favorite, another favorite Sid quote, but I don't know if I'll be able to find it. It's in, oh yeah, here it is. You want to hear my favorite page of the book, The Missing Link?
Absolutely.
He says, I'm not sure if it'll mean anyone to anyone, but I just love this. He says, the world in the form of nature is a reflection of the human mind. When I work with clients, I'll sometimes get out a mirror and say, look at that. It's a reflection. And though he's saying the world in the form of nature is a reflection of the human mind, which creates an illusionary gap between the spiritual and the physical. This gap in turn creates the duality of life. Trapped in this duality, our minds become full of disillusionment and lostness. As the human mind ascends in divine consciousness, the gap between subject and object begins to vanish, and the oneness of life emerges.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I think that's what's happening for us, you know, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, but the oneness of life is emerging.
Well, it fits perfectly with our OneMinding, our new name.
Right?
So, yeah, that's really good. Very cool.
And the universe is unfolding exactly as it should be.
Yeah, I've had on good authority that that's the case. Yeah.
Oh, I read it in a poem, so it must be true.
Yeah.
Oh, it's been so lovely. I think that's probably a really beautiful place to finish up. You reading The Missing Link, which is probably my favorite book in the whole wide world.
Yeah.
If you haven't, I've actually got a copy here. So there's 2 books that I highly recommend. Is obviously Jamie's new book, or revised new edition of his book Clarity, which is amazing. And then I highly recommend also The Missing Link by Sid.
Yeah, The Missing Link's great. One of my favorites as well.
Yeah, it's so good.
That wasn't the one that you read back in 2008 then, the rubbish one.
That was the one I read back in 1999 that I thought was a bag of shit. So there you go. Opinions really can change.
Oh,
Well, it shows it really does come from us.
Yeah, right?
yeah.
Yeah, the book hasn't changed.
Yeah, it really hasn't. And
It's different this time.
I've had some of the most profound insights of my life reading this book, and I feel so grateful for those. And yeah, I feel so grateful for that piece of work. So even if someone buys it and thinks it's not all that, it really is.
Yeah,
So,
you'll get to the point where it is.
yeah.
Just keep reading. And again, it's not on us to know the timing.
Yeah.
But, it will appear. So yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jamie. What an amazing first guest to have for our video podcast. Really, really appreciate you coming on. I've adored your work since my first insight. Before that, I wasn't interested, but but thank you for all that you've done. And and one thing I do want to say about Jamie is, I met him. He'd already Clarity, I think it was out. You were the international best-selling author. I went to one of his days, and I remember getting caught up about something. And you got on the phone to me. You spent an hour on the phone to me. This international best-selling author, coach to corporations and all these people, and you took time out of your day to really help me, and I'll never forget that. That kindness that you gave me, and you really are what you say on the tin, as they say. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
You are so welcome. You are so welcome. It's a pleasure to know you, and it's good to see you both.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie. It's been really, really wonderful, and I would love to do it again sometime. I think we're going to start doing lives and having some questions coming in from listeners. I think you'd be wow. You love that, don't you?
I love questions.
Yeah, me
So,
too.
yeah,
What is it about principals teachers? We love questions.
Yeah.
Well, that gives you insights, I suppose, doesn't it? It's fresh, a question that you may not have thought about from.
Yeah, it's a really good point.
Yeah, that is a great point, actually, Jem. Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you
so much. Really appreciate it. And I will see you soon.
Take care.
Thanks,
Bye.
Jamie.